Does hose size actually affect how your pressure washer performs? Well, that's what we're here to find out today. We're going to be testing out with the Ryobi 1.8, a well-loved pressure washer in the automotive detailing space for its base entry-level price point. And we're going to be taking the stock hose that it comes with, comparing it against the Uberlex 1/4-inch hose, the Active 5/16, and my preferred favorite, a 3/8 hose. We're going to figure out, does hose size actually affect your PSI? And importantly for car washing, does it actually affect your flow? Welcome back to the channel. Let's jump into it. Well, thank you guys for being here, and this is a test I'm actually super excited to dive into. Now, I've actually not run this test before, so I'm going to be learning along the way with you guys of how hose size actually affects three main things: coming to pressure, coming to flow, as well as current draw on our actual pump here. Now, this actually came from a comment of a recent video that I made with the brand new Active 3.0, where I was using the Active optional accessory 5/16 hose. Now, those big machines, something like the Active 3.0, the AR635 up there, are trying to achieve the most amount of flow humanly possible. So the question was, would going from something like a 5/16 to a 3/8 actually increase your flow? Now, typically, guys, when it comes to pressure washers, we're not necessarily looking for pressure, rather flow. So typically, we're trying to find something that's right around that 1000 PSI mark, maybe slightly less, around 900, 950 to about 1100 or so. Now, when it comes to pressure washers, typically what happens if you increase the pressure, typically your flow is going to drop. And adversely, if you increase your flow, your PSI drops. So finding something in the middle ground is very important. Now, typically the way we do that is by actually changing our orifice size on our nozzle tips. Now, the Ryobi here utilizes a 3.4 orifice. Something like the AR635 up there, the Active 3.0, requests a 6.5 orifice. So opening up that diameter in the actual pressure washer tip, allowing for flow, all the PSI and stuff. Now, it takes a long time to actually get this dialed in from the manufacturing level, but of course, us nerds, us detailers, us enthusiasts like to play around with our orifice size to get the machine really dialed in. And again, typically, most of us are just trying to chase the most amount of flow. Now, again, I think it makes a lot of sense if you really sit down and think about this, right? Something that has a larger inner diameter hose is naturally probably going to have a little bit more flow through it, allowing for more rinsability, but it could also drop the pressure, whereas something going down in hose size may actually restrict the flow, but bump pressure up. And that's what we're going to figure out here today. Now, the Ryobi 1.8 is a great entry-level machine, and this will be great for this test. And this also might indicate that even using something like a 3/8 might be a little bit too much for it, because it actually comes with a stock, as they claim, 1/4-inch inner diameter hose here. Now, this hose that comes with it, pretty garbage, to be totally honest. It's very cheap, very plastic. Now, there are some benefits to this, right? It's very small, it's very lightweight. You're not lugging around a huge 50-foot 3/8 hose like over here. So this is actually a 40-foot size. Now, this video could also be very different using a 100-foot hose versus 25 versus 50. We're not going to be testing that today, just inner diameter on it. But the big negative with this, of course, is having that cheap hose on here and the worry about actually basically splitting this thing while you're using it. Now, this, I don't want to actually do it, but if you kink this thing, you can actually start snapping the line in here, and then while you're washing the car, theoretically what could happen, that line splits, rips the pressure washer gun out of your hand, smack it into the car. Nobody wants that. So a very common accessory, especially for this pressure washer over here, is to bump up to something like this, the Uberlex 1/4-inch hose. Now, this is great for a unit like this, but not so great for higher flow units, and also some units like the Active 2.0, 2.3, 3.0 that need a steel braided hose inside. Now, the whole rationale for that is a lot of the times what happens is you're actually getting some basically surging of that inner diameter hose there, which can create some weirdness with your machine. It can actually surge. Not great for micro switches, not great for the motors, not great for pump heads. So a lot of people really like this for this machine, but overall a really fantastic hose here. Now, this is something that is still extremely lightweight, and the best part about this is you can actually kink this thing. So I can roll it over on itself, and then I put this flat and there's no memory in it. Something like this over here, a ton of memory for sure. Now moving over here to the active 5/16 hose, again, this is an optional accessory, does not come with their actual pressure washers unless you buy it in a bundle. Now this hose kind of is right in the middle between a 1/4 inch and a 3/8. It's not necessarily as big as a 3/8, which means it's not quite as heavy. Now this is still steel braided inside, meaning you can use it on the 2.0, 2.3, 3.0 here, but there are some nice benefits on this over the 3.8. Number one being it's a little bit lighter, and the other thing being is it's still flexible. So this is not a hose you can really kink over on itself. The memory just comes straight back. Now this is not personally my preferred pressure washer hose out there. I don't really love the texture on the outside. I actually use a 3/8 smooth Cobra Jet hose back there, being if you ever do accidentally tap it on the bumper while you're running around the side of the car or something, it's not going to leave any marring. Something like this, a little bit more textured. It's not my preferred one, but still a very, very nice hose here with all stainless steel quick disconnects on it. Really impressive unit there. Now this is, again, not my preferred 3/8 hose over here. This is actually one I picked up on Amazon. And the first thing you'll notice here, this bad boy is super heavy. Now, steel braided inside of here, and again, our largest inner diameter here. So theoretically gonna give the most amount of flow, but this is something that, you're going to be very lucky if you ever kink this darn thing. Even putting it over on itself, that is a beast, but you can see it comes back to memory. Now, the only reason I personally prefer using a 3/8 is just because of the feel of it. I love the smooth Cobra Jet hose there. I think it's the best pressure washer hose on the market. I'll leave all of these linked in the description below if you decide to purchase one of these. But yeah, this one, wouldn't personally recommend. If you're going to go 3/8, go with the Cobra Jet. But this is going to be very straightforward. So what we're going to do is we're going to hook up each one of these hoses to our Ryobi 1.8 here, and we're going to test the PSI on it. We're going to test the current draw on the machine to see if, okay, maybe they can achieve the same amount of PSI and flow on it, but your machine might actually be working hard. Now this is very important when it comes to especially using foam cannons on a lot of these units to make sure you're not over amping the machine. And in general, you don't want your pump to work harder than the other. So we'll test pressure, we'll test the flow. So we'll do our full flow testing in a bucket for 1 minute, let it go, weigh that water after the fact, and we'll figure out if there's any differences whatsoever between all of these. We're all set and ready to do our testing here. So we're going to start off, get a baseline figure with the factory Ryobi 1.8 hose. So we've got this all hooked up. You can see I've got my pressure gauge on here, my current meter up there. We've got the bucket with our scale ready to go. Now, of course, we're going to be using the stock 40-degree Ryobi 3.4 tip in here, and we'll be comparing all of them in between. So let's turn this machine on. Let's see what we're going to get for our pressure. All right, so 13.2 amps on the meter there and running about 975 PSI here. So pretty darn decent with that. Let's put this on and see how our flow test goes. I'll also be sharing, well, you guys can clearly see what the amp meter is, and I'll watch the PSI here to see if it wavers at all. Now, I have already taken this machine, warmed it up for about 5 minutes at this point now. So let's set this on here, set our timer, and we'll go for exactly 1 minute. So if we take 13.62 divided by 8.34, which is what a gallon of water weighs, that gives us 1.63 gallons per minute. So now that we understand the baseline figures, let's go to the Uberlex. Fan favorite 1/4 inch Uberlex hose now. Let's see what kind of PSI. Very interesting here. So 12.82 amps on there and definitely 975 PSI. I think probably the stock hose more around that 950. It's a little hard to tell on this gauge, getting very granular there, but definitely seeing a difference in terms of our current draw there. So let's see what our flow is. So if we take 13.88 divided by 8.34, that gives us 1.66 gallons per minute. So definitely a little bit more. And the interesting story here is the machine is actually working less hard and we're gaining a little bit more on the PSI and gaining flow. So definitely bumping up, I feel like, in diameter size. Pretty interesting there. I really don't think that stock hose is actually a 1/4 inch. And again, this machine is fully warmed up, ready to go. So there should be no differences in between there. Next, let's go to the 5/16. All right, guys, now time for the active 5/16 hose here. Now, the keen viewer might notice we actually did have to switch out guns. Same SGS gun here. The only difference is the Uberlex and the stock hose had a different fitting on top of here, and these already have quick disconnects pre-installed. Should make absolutely no difference. They're still going through the same pressure and all of that. So let's see what this hose gets, and let's see its current draw. Okay, so definitely right slightly even over 1,000 PSI. And you saw when I started it, 12.4 amps came back up right to that 12.8. So interesting, definitely slightly bit more PSI here. Let's run it through our GPM. If we take 13.94 divided by 8.34, that gives us 1.67 gallons per minute. So 0.01 more. Definitely really no difference at all. You would never actually notice that. Again, I do think it's interesting. The machine is running slightly less amps and definitely running over 1,000 PSI, where we didn't see that on the other two. So lastly here, let's go to our 3/8. Now time for the big boy. Again, this thing is rated at 4,000 PSI here. This is a legit big boy hose, to say the least. So switch this around, see what we get. Interesting. So right at 12.7 amps, we are now down below 1,000 PSI, which is really interesting. So I think the interesting point here is what we're hoping to see here is above 13.94 pounds of water here, and then we'll get into that calculation on GPM. Well, you guys can see this is exactly 0.2 pounds less than we had with the 5/16 hose, which is pretty darn interesting. So if we take 13.74 divided by 8.34, that gives us 1.64 gallons per minute. Now, what does that mean in terms of our spread? Really a 0.04 gallon per minute spread. Is that really anything? Honestly, no. Very negligible. PSI within like 75 PSI either way. Like one was, I think, 1,025, maybe slightly right there. And then, you know, hovering right about 950, 975. So I think that really confirms to me that hose size doesn't necessarily matter here. I think the machine is doing what it's doing. Now, one thing I can tell you that's actually different, when you have the machine turned off, you pull the trigger, there's a lot more water flow out of the 3/8 versus something like the stock hose that came on here. It's kind of like dribbling out versus quite a lot of water. So again, I think the big thing here is you're very much limited on what the pressure washer can output. And also consider when you're going up to your gun, you've got 3/8 quick disconnects throughout all of that. You're basically choking everything down. And then at the tip, you're going into a 1/4 inch, running the same orifice nozzle size. So very slight differences here, but I don't think it's enough to say that if you have something like a 1/4 inch hose, you should upgrade to a 3/8. And again, I would love to do this test on something like the AR635, but I'm not going to use the Uberlex hose that doesn't have steel braids in it and completely ruin that pump. If you're interested in doing that, maybe I will purchase a 1/4 inch with all this steel braided in it, and we can do that to see if there's any difference on the high flow machine. I personally don't think it's really going to matter because, again, going back to your nozzle tip size, you are limited by that. You're limited by your quick disconnects on there and everything in between. So I think from the information we found here, no negligible difference. Thanks for joining me on my episode of Mythbusters. We'll see you in the next one soon. Bye-bye.